I want to start with a scenario that I guarantee almost everyone listening has experienced at least once.
Oh, boy.
You know the one, you're at a family gathering, maybe it's the holidays, or a wedding. Actually, weddings are definitely the worst for this.
Oh, absolutely. Prime real estate for this scenario.
Right, so you're holding a lukewarm drink, you're feeling perfectly fine, just minding your own business, and then an aunt or an older family friend corners you,
Uh-huh.
and they lean in with that very specific tilt of the head, the one that's like half pity and half interrogation.
I can picture it perfectly.
And they ask, so is there anyone special on the horizon?
Ah, yes. The checkpoint.
Exactly, the checkpoint.
Because it's not really a question about your happiness, is it? It's an inspection. They want to see if you're, following the script.
Yeah, it feels like they're checking to see if you've actually become an adult yet. Because in our culture, adulthood has this very specific, very rigid definition. And, well, that is exactly what we are taking a sledgehammer to today.
I'm ready.
We are doing a deep dive into a really fascinating book. It's called Marriage, Singlehood and Beyond, Your Path, Your Choice by Julius Ikhide Etaifo. And the core argument here, which I just love, is that society has basically shoved us all onto what sociologists call the relationship escalator.
The escalator. It's such a perfect metaphor for this.
It really is.
Because it's this invisible pre-written script that we all just memorize without even realizing it. Step 1 is dating. Step 2, moving in together. Step 3, marriage. Step 4, kids.
And you just keep going up.
Right. The assumption is that the escalator only goes up and it only have that one destination.
Yeah.
And if you stop or if you try to get off on the second floor, people just assume the machine is broken.
Or worse, they assume that you are broken.
Exactly.
But the mission of this deep dive today isn't to say that the escalator is inherently bad. I mean, if you want to ride it to the top, great, good for you. But we're looking at the research from this source that says, hey, maybe we need to acknowledge the stairs and the elevators and the scenic routes too. We are going to talk about something the author calls personal vocation.
And that phrase, personal vocation, that is the absolute anchor for this whole discussion today.
Yeah.
It completely shifts the conversation from, why are you single?
Yeah.
To what is your life actually for?
Which is such a bigger, better question.
It is. So we're going to cover the sociology of family structures to show just how weird our normal way actually is.
Oh, the history stuff is wild.
It's incredible. We'll look at that surprising history of singlehood, which is way more powerful than people realize.
Yeah.
And then finally, we'll go through a practical checklist to help you figure out if you should be on that escalator or, climbing a mountain instead.
I love that. So let's start with the normal part. The source material hits pretty hard on this idea of the nuclear family. Mom, dad, 2 kids, a dog, the white picket fence.
The classic American dream setup.
Right. And we tend to think that's just the default setting for humanity since the dawn of time. But the book argues that's actually a total myth, isn't it?
Oh, it is a massive outlier, historically speaking. Etaifo breaks down family structures in a really interesting way here. The nuclear family, as we know it, is a very Western, very recent invention.
Really recent.
Yeah, we prioritize it because Western culture values privacy and financial independence above almost everything else. So it becomes this small, sealed-off unit.
Yeah.
But historically and globally, that unit is incredibly isolated.
Well, right, because if that little sealed unit cracks, like if someone gets sick or loses a job, there's no immediate safety net inside the house. You're just kind of on your own.
Precisely. And the source contrasts this with extended family systems, which, by the way, are still the norm in large parts of Africa, Asia, and Latin America today.
Which makes so much sense.
In those systems, the family isn't just a couple, it's a network. You have grandparents, cousins, aunts, uncles, and they're often raising children collectively. It's basically a resource-sharing economy.
You aren't facing the world as a duo, you're facing it as a tribe.
Exactly. And the source mentions communal living as well, particularly in indigenous groups.
Which honestly sounds so much less lonely than the isolated nuclear model we have now.
It really does. It creates a structure where deep loneliness is almost impossible because your very existence is tied to the collective, not just to one single romantic partner.
Right.
But here is the kicker for the modern listener. The book doesn't just look back and say, well, ancient tribes were better. It actually looks at how people today, right now, in modern cities, are hacking the system to create their own versions of this.
And this is the part that I found super practical because we are seeing these new terms pop up that completely challenge that strict binary of single versus married.
Yes.
One that really jumped out at me from the text was living apart together, or LAT.
Oh, LAT is fascinating because it solves a very specific friction point. which is domestic cohabitation.
The roommate phase.
Right. In an LAT arrangement, you have a couple who is fully committed. They are monogamous, they are long-term, but they deliberately maintain separate residences.
Which is so funny because I feel like if my grandmother heard that, she'd immediately say, oh, so they're just afraid of commitment.
And the author pushes back on that hard. He argues that for many people, especially those who highly value autonomy, or maybe older adults who have very set routines, or people with kids from previous marriages living apart, actually saves the relationship.
That makes a lot of sense.
It preserves the romance because you aren't fighting over dirty dishes or whose turn it is to clean the bathroom. You get the intimacy, but you keep your autonomy.
It effectively removes the whole roommate aspect of marriage, so you can actually just focus on the partner aspect.
Exactly.
But then the source goes even further into territory that I think is pretty new for a lot of people: queer platonic relationships.
Yes, this is a term that often gets deeply misunderstood. People hear it and they think it just means friends with benefits or like really good best friends.
Right, they downgrade it.
But a queer platonic relationship, or QPR, is much more significant than that. It essentially destroys the hierarchy that says romance is the absolute highest form of love.
Wow.
In a QPR, the commitment level is exactly what you would expect from a traditional spouse. You might buy a house together, you might raise kids together, be each other's medical proxy, but the connection itself is not romantic, and it's not sexual.
So it's basically formalizing a soulmate friendship. It's saying, you are my person, we're building a life together, even if we aren't sleeping together.
That's exactly it. It challenges what sociologists call amatonormativity.
Amatonormativity.
Yeah, it's a big word, but it just means the societal assumption that a central, exclusive, amorous relationship is the only valid way to structure a successful life.
Which is just not true.
Right. And then, of course, the source touches on polyamory and open relationships, but it makes a very sharp, very important distinction between the two.
Yeah, because I feel like often people just lump those together under the umbrella of non-monogamy, but the book says they actually have very different goals.
They do. An open relationship is usually focused on sexual freedom. Yeah. So you have a primary partner, but you have the agreed-upon liberty to engage sexually with other people.
Right.
Polyamory is different. It's about emotional multiplicity. It's the capacity to have multiple deep, committed, loving bonds simultaneously. It's not just about sex, it's about love.
So the big takeaway I got from this whole first section wasn't that everyone needs to go out right now and get 3 partners or move into separate apartments across town.
No, not at all.
It's that the one-size-fits-all model is just fading. The actual form of the relationship matters way less than the genuine connection and respect inside it.
Exactly. But I know what the skeptic listening right now is thinking. You hear all these new terms, LAT, QPR, and you think, okay, this is just modern millennial flakiness.
Oh, for sure. The Peter Pan argument. People just refusing to grow up.
Right. People are just selfish and afraid of real commitment, so they're inventing fancy acronyms for it.
But that is exactly where the history section of this book absolutely blew my mind. Because being single or non-traditional isn't some modern internet age invention. The book takes us all the way back to ancient Greece.
It does. It tells the story of Ariston. Now, Ariston wasn't some outcast who couldn't get a date. He was a highly respected philosopher in Athens who chose to live simply among the olive trees.
By choice.
Entirely by choice. The text describes his solitude not as an escape from adult responsibility, but as a deliberate pursuit of wisdom.
He viewed family life as a distraction from his actual work.
Precisely. He believed that to truly think deep thoughts, he needed a level of silence and focus that a bustling household just couldn't provide. So he wasn't failing to find a wife. He was succeeding at finding clarity.
And it's not just men in togas out in the woods either. I was really struck by the mention of the Maasai culture in East Africa. Because I think we have this Western stereotype about traditional tribal societies, assuming that women are always viewed as property or strictly defined as mothers.
It's a very powerful counter-narrative in the book. The source describes the Ensaipo. These are single women within the Maasai community who are actually highly respected.
That's amazing.
They are independent, they possess great strength, and, crucially, they are allowed to own property and livestock in their own right. Their status isn't derived from a husband.
Which completely contradicts the idea that women historically were always just dependent on men to survive.
Exactly. And we can't forget the heavy hitters of the Renaissance either. The giants of genius, as the book calls them.
Oh, right. Leonardo da Vinci, Sir Isaac Newton, Beethoven.
The argument here is that their singlehood wasn't some tragic deficit in their lives. It was actually the fuel for their greatness. The book uses this concept of sublimation.
Sublimation.
Yes, think about it. If Isaac Newton had been worrying about paying a mortgage or staying up all night with a sick child, does he have the mental bandwidth left over to invent calculus?
I mean, maybe, but probably not.
The source argues that singlehood allowed these figures to pour all their life force, their libido, in the broadest creative sense, into their craft.
Okay, so historically, being single could clearly be a power move. But what about the religious aspect? Because I feel like that's where the most intense pressure comes from for a lot of people, the whole be fruitful and multiply mandate.
Oh, absolutely.
It feels like God is the one running the relationship escalator sometimes.
This raises an incredibly important question, and the source actually handles it with a lot of theological depth. It directly challenges the assumption that religion always mandates marriage. In fact, if you look at the roots of many faiths, it's often the exact opposite.
Specifically, the book dives into Christianity and a passage in Matthew 19 that I think most people just totally gloss over.
Yes, it's the passage about eunuchs.
Yeah.
Now, that word sounds very drastic to modern ears.
Yeah.
But Jesus talks about those who have made themselves eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. The author argues this isn't about literal physical castration. It's Jesus validating voluntary celibacy. He is placing the choice not to marry on the exact same level of dignity as marriage. He calls it a valid, respected choice, a sacred choice.
That's a huge shift from the narrative of you have to get married to be a good, upstanding religious person.
It really is.
And it's not just Christianity, right? The deep dive covers several global faiths.
Absolutely. Look at Buddhism. The monastic life, which is strictly celibate, is seen as the absolute fast track to enlightenment because you are actively avoiding attachment to worldly things.
Makes sense.
In Hinduism, there's the brahmacharya stage. It's a student stage defined by celibacy and intense, undivided focus. In Taoism, celibacy is viewed as a practical way to preserve qi, your vital life energy.
So the aha moment here for me was that historically and spiritually, singlehood wasn't just a backup plan for people who couldn't find a match.
Yeah.
It was often seen as a higher calling.
Or at the very least, a massive source of strength. It was a completely legitimate path to personal power, wisdom, and deep spiritual connection.
Okay, so we know it's valid historically, and we know the modern relationship models are changing. But let's bring it back to the here and now, because even if I know Leonardo da Vinci was single and thriving, it doesn't stop the very real pain of feeling like you're falling behind your peers today.
And that brings us perfectly to the core conflict of the book: societal conditioning versus personal vocation.
The book tells the story of Zara, and I think Zara is basically the avatar for a lot of people listening right now.
She really is. Zara is standing at a crossroads. Her friends are all getting married. The ticking clock is getting really loud.
Yeah.
And she feels the heavy weight of that escalator.
Yeah.
She's completely torn between what she actually wants, which is exploration, independence, freedom, and what she thinks she should want based on everyone around her.
And the source contrasts her dilemma with a really harsh cautionary tale, the story of Omar. This one actually hit me hard because it shows the sheer damage of doing the quote-unquote right thing for the wrong reasons.
Omar's story is tragic. He's a highly successful architect. He never really felt the internal pull to marry, but his family and his culture heavily expected it.
So he just caved.
He complied, he found a nice woman, he got married, and the source details the fallout from that conformity. He felt constantly suffocated. That suffocation naturally led to resentment. The resentment led to infidelity and eventually a very messy, painful divorce.
The key point there for me was that his conformity didn't just hurt him, it hurt his wife, it hurt his extended family.
Exactly. We often think of staying single as a selfish act.
Yeah.
But the book argues that marrying when it is not your true vocation is the actual selfish act. Because you are dragging someone else into a life script that you don't actually want to play a part in.
So how do we avoid doing that? How do we find that true vocation? The book introduces us to Chen, a stunt director.
Yeah.
And I just love this guy's whole vibe.
Chen is the perfect modern example of being single by vocation. He lives in New York. He's at the absolute top of his game professionally. And he chooses singlehood, not because he's socially awkward or can't find a date, but because he values spontaneity above literally everything else.
Right. If he gets a call at 2 in the morning to fly to Morocco to rig a car crash for an action movie, he wants to just grab a bag and go.
Yes.
He values that freedom, that ability to take wild risks without having to constantly compromise or check in with a partner.
And that is his vocation. He's not waiting for someone to complete him. He is actively living the exact life that aligns with his core values. He knows that if he were to try and be a good husband in the traditional sense, he would have to clip his own wings.
So for the listener right now who is nodding along but maybe thinking, okay, how do I know if I'm a Chen or an Omar? The source actually provides a really helpful checklist, a practical guide to discernment.
It does. It moves from the high-level philosophy right down to the practicality of everyday life. One of the first criteria on that checklist is career versus compromise.
Like the example of Celine in the book.
Yes, Celine, the software engineer. She travels constantly for work. She realized that her career wasn't just a way to pay bills, it was her passion. And it required a level of extreme flexibility that a traditional marriage would almost certainly hinder.
Right. You can't just uproot a spouse every 3 months.
Exactly. If your life's work requires 100% of your energy and mobility, you have to honestly ask yourself if a full-time partner actually fits into that equation.
And then there's the social aspect. The checklist asks, are your emotional needs already being met by your friends and your community?
This is a crucial distinction. We so often conflate intimacy with romance. But if you have a really rich village around you, mentors, close friends, colleagues, you might not actually feel the lack of a spouse at all.
You might just feel the lack of social approval, which is a very different thing.
Exactly. You're feeling the pressure, not the loneliness.
And the third point on the checklist was about solitude. Do you actually need physical space to be okay?
Like Alex, the freelance writer mentioned in the text, some people just require extended solitude to function and to recharge.
Yeah.
In a traditional cohabitating marriage, you are constantly perceived. You're constantly in someone else's space, and they are in yours. For Alex, choosing singlehood is a way to protect that necessary space for his own mental health.
But I do want to address the elephant in the room here. The fear. The fear that if you get off the escalator and choose singlehood, you're inevitably going to end up as the weird, lonely old person.
Ah, yes, the spinster or bachelor trope. The source tackles this head-on by confronting the myth that marriage somehow cures loneliness.
Yeah, I think we all know plenty of married people who are incredibly lonely.
Precisely.
Yeah.
The reality is that loneliness comes from a lack of genuine connection, not a lack of a legal spouse. Marriage can actually be the loneliest place on earth if the connection is dead.
The book tells the story of Carlos to illustrate the alternative to that.
Carlos is great. He's a 50-year-old teacher. He got divorced. His kids grew up and moved away, and he found himself facing that massive void.
The empty house.
Right. But instead of rushing onto dating apps to find a new wife just to fill the silence, he joined a hiking club. He started volunteering locally.
And he found his people.
He built a new community. He essentially proved that community can replace the nuclear family model as a vital source of emotional sustenance. But, and this is the important catch, it requires effort.
Yeah, it doesn't just happen to you.
No,
Well,
you can't just sit on the couch and wait for it. If you don't have a built-in spouse, you have to actively build the village yourself.
It's all about being intentional. Whether you are living apart together or polyamorous or single or happily married in the suburbs, it only works if you actually choose it.
That is the perfect summary. Marriage, singlehood, celibacy, these are all equal paths on the map of life. One isn't the main highway while the others are just dirt roads. They are just different routes to different destinations.
Right.
The real tragedy is getting on the wrong bus just because you were too afraid to read the schedule.
That's beautifully put. There's a metaphor in conclusion of the book about a character named Anna that really stuck with me. She finds an old journal of hers while she's cleaning.
Yes. She finds a passage she wrote years ago. It says, "To truly live, one must know oneself." She had ticked all the societal boxes, good grades, steady job, steady relationship, but she just felt completely empty.
She did everything right.
But the journal reminded her that she had stopped exploring. She had stopped asking, who am I? And she'd started asking, what do people expect of me?
And that is exactly the challenge we want to leave you with today. Look at your own life. Are you on your current path, whether you're married, dating, or single because you actively chose it? Or are you just afraid to step off the escalator?
It is a terrifying question to ask yourself, honestly, but it's a necessary one. Finding your personal vocation requires the courage to disappoint the people who expect you to just follow the script.
But as we've seen with Ariston, with the Insaipo in the Maasai culture, with Chen, the stunt director, the reward for that courage is a life that actually belongs to you.
And really, that is the ultimate definition of success.
But it does make you wonder, If everyone got off the escalator tomorrow, what would happen to our entire economy? I mean, so much of our consumption is based on every single nuclear family needing to buy their own house, their own lawnmower, their own appliances. Is the escalator just the greatest marketing tool ever invented?
Right.
Something to mull over?
That's a whole other deep dive right there.
It really is. So go find your path. Thanks for diving in with us.
Until next time.